People always say you need expensive plugins to make a hit. So on today's video, I'm about to put that to the test. So here's the challenge. I made these two beats, one using only the stock plugins available in FL Studio, and for the other one, I use very expensive plugins. So you're going to tell me which is which. Before I do the big review, I would love you guys to go to the comment section. Just give me your thoughts and tell me which is which. Which do you think was made with the stock plugin and which beat do you think was made with the paid plugin? Alright guys, so beat B was the beat I made using only stock plugins, and I'm going to show you guys the plugins that I use and how I basically came up with this. So the first thing I added was Flex, and I went over to the Essential Guitars. The Essential Guitar pack doesn't come initially with Flex. You need to download it and it's just going to show up on your Flex. I opened up the Essential Guitars and I got this fingernail hum preset, and with that I came up with this. I'm going to play guys while it sounds dry without any effects, so I'm going to turn off all the effects. So this is what it sounds like. One thing that I did also was to make sure that I used only stock effects, so just to show you guys that not just only stock plugins, but you could also use stock effects as well. So for the effects, I started with Fruity Parameter EQ, and for this I just cut out some of the highs and then I cut out the lows so I can leave space for the bass. I added the Fruity Flangers, and with this I just left the default preset like that, and I brought the mix to like 60%. This kind of adds a bit of character to the guitar. And then moving on, I added the Fruity Chorus and then I brought the mix level to 68%. And moving on, I added the Fruity Reverb 2. With this I used the venue preset and then I brought the wets down to 57%. And then the last thing I did was just add the Fruity Delay 3. With this I used the ping pong preset. I brought the wets to 27%. So yeah guys, moving on, I went over to packs right here and I went to instruments. I went over to the keyboard section and I use this electric preset right here. It's going to load up in direct wave, which is the sampler, and you're going to be able to play this. And then with this I just made chords from the guitar. So basically with this, it sounded really nice, so I knew I didn't need to do too much for this. So for the effects, I only added the Fruity Parameter EQ, cut out some of the lows, and then I added the Fruity Reverb 2. With this, I just used the venue preset, brought the wets down, and then I brought the stereo separation all the way to stereo. So guys, moving on, the next thing I did is to add a string section. The same thing, I went over to the packs and I went over to the instruments, went over to orchestral, and with this I just added the string section right here. It's going to still load up on direct wave, and with this I just came up with this simple melody. And for this as well, I added the Fruity Parameter EQ, cut out the lows, and then I added the Fruity Reverb 2, and I used the venue presets, and I brought the stereo separation all the way down. So guys, moving on, I just loaded up the Fruity DX10 and I used the log drum preset instead of here, and this is what I came up with. And then moving on, the next thing I did was to add a bass. The log drum sounded very thin. I wanted something to just, give him more edge. So for the bass, I went over to Harmless and I used this Just the Sub GOL preset. And then finally, I went back to Flex because I wanted the melody. And for this, I went over and I used this preset called Metal Butterfly, and this is what I came up with. But then for this, I knew I was going to add a bunch of effects because I love adding effects to my melody just so it gives it a lot more movement. So I went over to the effects and I was wondering how I was going to do this with stock plugins, but I found a way. So the first thing I added is Fruity Parameter EQ, and then moving on, usually at this point, this is where I use Shaper Box or I use Portal. But since I'm not using any of the paid plugins, I had to go back to the OG, the legendary effect plugin ever in FL Studio, Gross Beat, and I use this Complex 10 preset. And after that, I added the Fruity Reverb 2. I used the venue preset and then I brought the stereo separation all the way to stereo. And the last thing I did was to add Fruity Chorus. So yeah guys, and just like that, the melody was done. I just needed to add some drums, and for the drums I went over to the AFRO-ELEMENTS sample pack, which is going to be in the description. It has a lot of fire drum sounds in the drum collection. I went to the drum loops. I used this label drum loop, and then all together this is what everything sounds like. So guys, moving on to the beat A, which I made with the paid plugins. So the first thing I got was the SRX electric piano. I used the pure EP2 preset and I came up with this simple chord progression. So as you guys can hear, it's an easy chord progression. So for the effect, I only added the Fruity Parameter EQ, cut out the lows as usual. And the last thing I added is RC20. I used the Vinyl 3 preset. I turned up the space. I brought down the distortion. And then moving on, I needed something to occupy the high ends of the frequency spectrum. I went over to Addictive Keys. I used the Arena Ballad preset. And then for the effect, I basically just copied the same effects from the piano. So guys, moving on, I went over to Purity and I got this simple sign preset. And for this, I just laid down this simple melody. I know it sounds like it's siren, but I don't know, it was just very catchy. So for this, I actually had one playing high an octave and then one playing low. So what makes this really sound a lot better are the effects that I added. So the first thing I added is Shaper Box 2. I went over to the preset menu and I used this Pandoc presets. And then moving on, I added Valhalla Supermassive. I brought the mix down to 60%, just the default preset. And for this, I also wanted some orchestral feel. I went over to SRS Orchestra and I used this preset called VC Sec MF. Just like the lead, I also have two sections, one playing low and one playing a bit higher. But you know one thing guys, I feel like this string section from the stock FL Studio sounds way richer than this SRS Orchestra plugin, but maybe it's just me or maybe it's just my ears. This sounds nice, so don't get me wrong. So for the SRS Orchestra, I went over to the effects. I added the Fruity Parameter EQ. The next thing I added is reverb. I used the Valhalla Vintage Verb. I brought the mix level to 32 and then I brought the decay to 2 seconds. And then the last thing I added is wider. This is a stereo separation plugin. So guys, moving on, I wanted to add some bass, and for my bass I went over to Purity. As you guys already know by now, I use my saved preset that I use in Purity, which is a combination of the A&A bass guitar and the EB rock finger preset. And the last thing I did was add this really nice bass from Analog Lab. And finally, the last thing I did was to add a drum loop, and just like the other one, I went over to the AFRO-ELEMENTS sample pack and I got this Havoc drum loop. There are a lot of amazing sounds inside of this. There's a drum collection which has drum rolls and fills. There's also a section for drum loops, and the loops have stems as well. And then moving on to the melody collection. The melody collection has melody loops inside. The loops in here all have stems as well. And then this also includes some one shots that I used to make the melodies. And just to show you guys a little bit of what I'm talking about, these are some of the drum loops that I hear. this is like some crazy amapiano drum loop. And with the drum loop, this is what everything sounds like. So as you guys can see, it's not about the plugin, it's how you use it. So you don't have to wait till you can afford these very expensive plugins to make a hit. Start with whatever you have. Trust me, you're going to come up with a lot of fire beats. So I hope you guys really enjoy watching this little experiment that I just did. If you did, don't forget to go down there, give me your thoughts in the comment section as always. Drop any video suggestion you have and I'll do well to join you guys there. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys in the next video. I'm out of here. Peace.